Hi, I'm Ron Nutter. Welcome to another edition of Tech Bites with Ron Nutter. And this time I'm going to show you how to take a Raspberry Pi and a USB hard drive and start making your own network attached storage unit. And that begins now. You've probably seen the different brands out there, Synology, Drobo, but when you're just getting started, that can be a little pricey. But when there's another reason you need to look at for having network attached storage, or saying, they're almost the same thing. It's almost a distinction without a difference, and I'm sure I'm going to get some emails over that one. But for the purposes of your IoT network at home, if you don't already have a NAS, this is one way you can get started, because look at all the things that you're having to keep up with. You may want to keep at least one or two versions of older firmware. So for some of the devices you've got, or in case, say, your internet connection is flaky one day, if you've got the firmware locally, then you can get it upgraded that much sooner. Keeping the documentation handy, keeping any tech notes. There's all sorts of things. And that's covering just the IoT side of things. Even backup images of, what you've got on whatever Raspberry Pis you've got, whether this one's Mycroft or if it's Home Assistant or openmediavault, which is what we're going to be using this time. Having those backups in a place other than your laptop is a handy thing to have. And this is more than just that. If, say you've got your Android phone, iPhones, this probably wouldn't apply to, but there are probably ways that you can back up your Android phone to your network attached storage device so that you have a way, in case something happens, you can pull some of that information back. So it's really very straightforward. This is about, I got the deluxe starter kit from the folks at CanaKit. So I got the case. This is a 16 meg card starter version. And something to think about, this is why you want to do it with Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, is this is a gig port. So while you're probably not going to get that kind of throughput on this device, it's certainly not going to choke out at 100 megs. And then you can start with something as simple as an external USB drive. Yeah, I know it's probably not rated for NAS use, such as some of the Western Digital Reds, but this is a starting point, because here's the other thing to think about. This gives you kind of baby steps ways into when you want to build your own larger NAS, or if you decide you'd rather go get one pre-built, this one will get you up and running. But I tell you what, let's start walking through the steps, and I think you'll find it's pretty simple. Now, like I said, I'm using openmediavault. So we're going to assume at this point you've already downloaded the image, you've burned it onto the microSD card using Etcher or your program of choice. You've put it in the Raspberry Pi, and you've got everything powered up. So now we're going to take that from there.
Okay, now that you've got the image burned on the microSD card and have put it in the Raspberry Pi and attached your external USB drive, now we're ready to get things up and running. Now, once, this is in the show notes too, but once you've got things powered up and all the lights are blinking, let it sit for about 10 minutes or so, because there's going to be some updating that openmediavault is supposed to be doing when it first comes up, and just kind of let things settle in. So we'll start going down the list here, and this is really very straightforward, and I've dealt with some other NAS systems, and this one has been pretty straightforward to set up. So we'll first go down here to disks, and if everything's working right, this is the drive that I put into 2 terabyte Western Digital's Essentials drive, and it even reports you the serial number. So that's a serial number. So that tells you that it's there. And if you plug it in after the MediaVault's up and running, you can just click on scan here, and that should help it see it. Now, we'll go on down here to File Systems, and it does show it, but see, here's the magic thing to look at. It says it is not mounted. So before we can do anything to it, we've got to get it mounted. And that's just a matter of clicking that line and then going up here and clicking Mount, and then we'll click Apply, and then Yes, and it'll be up and running here just very quickly. So that's the main thing you get done to start with. Now we'll also need to create a user, and that's so that you can access the share remotely. And we'll just enter user, and obviously you probably want to do something a little bit different, but just for the purposes of this, and we'll give it a password of user. Don't need an email address. And then we'll enter in the password one more time, and then we'll click Save. And that's one of the, okay, there, I thought we might have to do another apply, but okay, we do, and then yes. And it's not really that big of a situation. Now, we'll go down here to the SMB CIFS, which is, it's Common Internet File System, but basically SMB is a standard Microsoft setup, and most systems can interpret that one. So we'll click Enable. Now, if you already have a named work group running, you'll want to change this where it says work group to something else. I'm just going to leave it the way it is for right now. We'll click Save, and then Apply, and then Yes. And then we'll go to Shares, and we'll click Add. And the name of the share, see, it doesn't know about anything's out there. So we first got to give it the drive that it's going to access. And we're just going to call this NAS for right now. And you can name it anything you want to. And we'll click the drop down. And then there's the drive. And you could pretty much leave the permissions at default. You can really get creative, but for the purposes of what we're doing this for, you really don't need to. So we'll click Save again, and then Apply, and then Apply Configuration Changes. And you see where it says read only? No, that's what we want it to say. Now, we said to public, that means you wouldn't have to have any logins, but there's probably some benefits to making that work. So all we have to do at this point, that's done. You've got a single drive up and running. So now this is on a Mac, so I'll just go over here to Go and connect to server. And I've already got this entered in. So we'll click Connect. And it doesn't remember the user, so that's fine. And we'll just do user and user. And the drive is set up, so it's that accessible. And just to show you that everything is up and running, we will go down here and we'll just drag a file over here. And that's it. So it's up and running. It is really very straightforward.
And it's nice when something like this goes together that easily. There are any number of ways you can do this. I mean, we'll look in future videos with doing this as a multi-drive system. There's several variations of that. There's a whole conversation we'll get into when we go to what's called RAID 1 or mirrored drives. And we're going to look at least 2 steps of things you can do. Yes, there are bigger NASs. Yes, there are ones that, the sky's the limit. But the nice thing about doing it with a Raspberry Pi, this gives you experience so that when you go to buy that big system, if you decide that's the way you need to go, you've already got experience with kind of how things should work. And there's other connectivity options. You'll hear something about NFS, iSCSI. Right now, you don't have to worry about that because with the way I've set it up, now granted, I showed you accessing it from a Mac, but I did SMB for a reason because there's a lot of people out there that use Windows. So by changing the workgroup to match what your computers are at home, this will just appear as another system or drive out there. So it makes it that much easier to use because in the event that something happened and you had to leave the house quickly and you might not know if you were coming back, you could grab your Raspberry Pi, actually Raspberry Pi and drives, so you would have the backups of everything that you got. So if you wanted to back up your smartphone pictures to this, there's all sorts of things, but this at least kind of gets you in the door and get it up and running. So this was, I think the deluxe starter kit was about $60. This was about another 60 roughly. So for 120, you've got a good starter system because let's face it, if you go with the commercial NAS options, you're going to be getting into it for a lot more than that. And I've got two different ones, but I wanted to see what was possible with the Raspberry Pi because with more and more things being available on the Raspberry Pi, and we've already talked about a couple of options so far on this channel about how you can use the Raspberry Pi. I thought this made a lot of sense. So I've got several more videos planned with this. If you've got questions about NAS or SAN, especially as it relates to your home network, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer what I can because this is something that this got my interest, being able to do it with off-the-shelf affordable drives without having to, spend a lot of money to get started, because this is something that can grow quite a bit. Now, there is one thing I would suggest, and yeah, this is a good example here. What you'll want to do is do something like this that is a powered USB hub, and you would put this between the Raspberry Pi and your external drives. One drive might not be a problem, but keep in mind the power for this drive is coming from the power that's driving this. So this might not be a good thing to do. And I'm erring on the side of caution when I say this, of having something that can supply the power to this or multiple drives and not tax the power supply on this. It should be doable, but I'd rather be a little safe. So there are several options. Now this one happens to be a USB 3.0 hub, and the reason I'm saying you want a powered hub, and here's why. It has, you can't really see it unfortunately, a place for power to be put in here, and it normally would come with a separate power supply, and this way all your external drives are powered from this. And if you say you have to take one offline, well, you've got individual power switches on this one. Don't think it's going to be a big deal, but it's something to think about. These are not that expensive. Now, the USB 3.0 one was a little bit more expensive because of the speed. I don't know that it's going to be that big of a deal for you on this kind of scale, but it's something to think of. Well, I'm about to hit the limit that I like to have on the videos to keep them reasonable and timely for everybody. Thank you again for watching the channel. And for those that have been with me on this journey, thank you for those that have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Everybody I've got, I try to do videos that I think will be of benefit to you, and I've taken suggestions along the way. And sometimes, I've been called out for giving bad information or incorrect information, and I just want the right things for you all. So this would be something that will be showing up in Volume 2 of the book. I'm already considering Volume 3. So there's so many potentials for this, and it's going to be a very interesting journey. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in the next video.